Hello and welcome to Upstage Downstage.
With me, Richard Platt, seated in the upper circle.
And me, Stephen Rees, seated in a cheap seat. This is the Theatre Podcast, where we discuss productions we've seen, things we've liked and may not have liked, giving our complete unprofessional and non-biased opinions.
So grab a brew, take a seat and let's raise that curtain. On today's edition, we have a special episode which we like to call a mini-sode, as we'll be discussing Barry Humphries, the man behind the mask, which we saw on the 9th of April 2022 at Nottingham Playhouse. For those that don't know, Barry Humphries is the creator behind the legendary Dame Edna Everage, Sir Lewis Pattison and the cartoon strip Barry Mackenzie. In this show, Barry peels off his mask to introduce the man behind the masterpiece. So with all that said, let's
set the scene! So we began by sitting in the audience and we looked out at the stage and there's a piano and just a Chesterfield leather chair and a huge screen just at the back, which was nicely decorated by an elegant gold frame. And it started with the pianist coming out in his apron, just doing a bit of dusting, shall we say, with a feather duster. Again, another 5 minutes before it started.
Yeah, definitely.
And then the legendary Barry Humphries walked on set with a huge round of applause and began to talk about his life and where it all started from. It was quite nice, wasn't it, Richard?
Yeah, I think it was good that it was a reflection on his life with humour, and I think people don't always realise there is somebody behind the mask actually pulling the strings, writing the scripts and coming up with all the comedic moments that you take as a household name when you see somebody on TV.
Well, that's it. Everybody knows Dame Edna Everage, but if you're to say, who's Barry Humphries? I'm guessing a lot of people would think, oh, that rings a bell, but I'm not quite sure. We say Dame Edna, it's like, oh, of course, yeah, it's that's her.
Yeah, and I think that's very much about what you realise how much character work's gone in to make this person so
enigmatic,
iconic in her own way that people remember that so much. And in a way it's good because from an anonymous perspective, Barry can go about his own daily life and disappear into the crowd really when he's finished his work. So, you know, you can see why it has its uses as well.
And I like stories like this when you just say it's not a show, they're not putting on a show, but they're talking about their life and how they came to be, how they decided that acting was for them, that they want to be part of the theatre world and entertainment industry. And it was quite interesting to know that he had the choice of wanting to go down the straight route of being a dramatic performer, but found that due to this little anecdote where he talks about his legs in tights and thinking that the audience are laughing at him for these legs in tights, and so he just hid behind things during that stage, but he actually leant into that. And as he say, you sort of veer into the corner when you're driving, you veer into what frightens you. But because everyone was laughing at him, he thought maybe comedy's for me. And some of the stories that he does talk about, it's a lot of people saying, no, you don't want to go into this, you shouldn't be a comedian, you shouldn't go into acting, you shouldn't do this and that and the other. And it just proves after all these years that he's still got it.
Yeah, and I think it shows that
he's a star.
Yeah, you sort of forget how many decades he's gone through where he's been involved in some part of your childhood, your adulthood, because he was a prime-time TV star as Dame Edna.
It was nice to hear him talk about how the creation of Dame Edna came to be, where he showed us a picture of his mother and then a picture of Dame Edna, and they look very similar, and then he said, well, I can't think why.
Yeah, and
I think
he's never really discussed where Dame Edna's come from or where his influences or inspirations come from, but in this tour he actually does talk about the fact that it is his mother and his aunties that are very much
people
steered,
who phoned up on radio stations
and but also local WI group, women's groups, where he's seen the person who's the chair who's been very outspoken, and it sparked something in him to create this character who's quite matriarchal, quite royal, even though there's no royal status, and you know that sort of lends itself to
pomposity, which he does brilliantly. And the fact that when these ladies were phoning up to complain about him as Barry Humphries, the entertainer, they'd be like knocking him down a peg. Yeah. And then he'd join in on that, but as Dame Edna saying, oh, he's ridiculous. And
I can't believe how he's allowed to do that.
And that's how Dame Edna was created, by basically mimicking what those ladies were saying at the time.
And also fueling the illusion that Dame Edna is her own person in her own right. And I think it's always somebody you know that's like that. that that's outspoken, that it's the Hyacinth Bouquet moment. It's those sort of characters that are above standards. And in the fact that Dame Edna gave herself a damehood, it just shows that level of pomposity, I think.
And it was nice seeing some clips that you can see on YouTube out there of just segments of the Dame Edna show. Because I first got into Dame Edna by seeing, it was in 94, I think, or the 90s. You know, Dame Edna Everidge's Neighbourhood Watch, and that was a great programme. It was so funny.
Yeah.
And over the years, she's always stuck with me. But I never delved too far into who that person who created her was.
No, because
it was nice to see that backstory of him growing up, and I don't want to spoil it for viewers and give away all his
exactly. I think I like the way that it had been put together as a night of entertainment for us. It was basically a spoken word autobiography on stage, but it had got chapters. The performance he did was reinforced by projections of maps and places where he lived, or some family shots that nobody really has seen, or bits of him when he's early really performer in productions before Dame Edna became a character. It also helped him get through the evening to remind him, because hats off to Barry Humphries, he's 88 now, and for a man to deliver such a full-length evening of entertainment, I think that...
And to tour it as well,
exactly.
Go everywhere.
He's already toured it in Australia, and now he's touring it in the UK, so he thrives for performing on stage, and I think it's very evident, even at the age he just is in his happy place when he's stood on that stage with an audience full of people that are enjoying it.
And I really liked listening to the creation of the character of Les Patterson as well. Not particularly a character I'm fond of, because you sort of just want to cut to Dame Edna. Well, I do. But I'm finding myself, as I get a little bit older now, that I'm liking that coarse language, that blue way about him, that just dirty vileness.
And also that's referenced from people that he's come across in his life and his career, where he's realised that the only way to be comedic in certain working men's clubs, the places where he performed, where he created his craft, if you can't beat them, join them, to actually get their attention, to then bring Dame Edna out and use it as a springboard for Dame Edna to enhance her presence, really.
I like to listen to him just talk.
Yeah, definitely.
That was one. We were all hooked as an audience. We wanted to just lean in and
you just
be
wanted,
in awe of this magnificent person. And interestingly enough, it wasn't just us that was leaning in, listening. It was a certain celebrity which we found in quite close to us as well. Yeah. Who was it, Richard?
It was Rhys Shearsmith.
From the League of Gentlemen fame.
Then we didn't realise until the interval that he was actually 2 rows in front of us. So it shows that the man behind the mask has got a lot of followers from the comedy world, that you sometimes have to remind yourself that how do new comedy writers learn? They learn by seeing those before them that have written and performed in such a way that they enhances their performances, because they learn from the greats.
And on a segment from that, whilst keeping on topic by learning from the greats, we're big fans of RuPaul's Drag Race, and in the current season that they're airing, there's a heterosexual Drag Race star contestant, and it's quite weird to see how they react to this straight guy in sort of a queer world, queer setting, and yet
performing in drag,
and they forget that Barry Humphries has been there, done that.
Yeah,
and we're talking from the 48, I think.
Yeah,
was
48,
it 48?
Yeah, 48. Yeah.
Well, that's when he first started, I think.
But that wasn't uncommon. He wasn't the only person performing in drag in that day and age. There was pantomimes. There's people that have been performing on stage dressed as women for a long time. So it is very strange when they claim that in RuPaul's Drag Race that it's almost the first straight person to be a drag queen on a TV programme, when we in the UK have been witnessing this, and in America, because one thing I have forgot is that Barry Humphries won 2 Tony Awards for performing a show in San Francisco that ran for 4 months. And those sort of little things that the stars of today need to almost remember the history, but rather than sort of claiming something's new. There's a lot more out there.
The thing about Barry Humphries and his creations as well, which is significant and a lot of people know of him or his creations, is, if you think about it, how many times do we go to a fancy dress party and how many characters is dressed as Dame Edna?
Well, exactly.
You always see a Dame Edna or a Wurzel Gummidge.
Yeah, there's always...
there's always he's one of them characters that there's always a Dame Edna There's always that purple wig with the funny spectacles.
And it's always when you were younger, that was the go-to for certain people because it was an iconic look. And I think it doesn't take much to recognise that personality. You know, it doesn't take a lot because of the amount of work that's gone into creating that character.
What was nice to actually see as well is understanding the legend behind his New Zealand bridesmaid, Madge Alsop.
Yeah, definitely.
It was nice to hear about Emily Perry.
Yeah.
And she managed to live over
she
100
was
or
over 100.
over 100.
She was over 100. She lived over 100. And I think people forget that dry, non-spoken part has more power and more comedy because of how she performed it than people realise. You know, it was the reactions, the sort of... It was almost a mime character. It was very much within the mime world where it's all about facial expression and body language. And she really did that.
And I tell you something, whether this comes from the vaudevillian era, which I think it does, because Hilda Baker from the UK, she had an act where she had this really tall man in a blonde wig called Cynthia.
Yeah.
And he would not speak at all.
No.
She would use him like a prop. And then when she did Not On Your Nelly sitcom for Granada Studios in the mid-70s, she had another character which was very, very camp, part of a couple called Gilbert. And he just wore the most extravagant outfits as well. And she'd have catchphrases like, "Oh, what are you today, Gilbert? Oh, you one of those, are you?" And he played one of those parts just where, like, Dame Edna would speak to Madge, like, "Madge, the badge Madge," you know, when they had an audience. But that person was a character, but would never, ever speak.
No.
And I like those kind of roles. And I once, it's a personal thing for me, whenever I put forward a sitcom for getting reviewed by someone, I'd get someone sending me a message back saying, "You've got a character here that doesn't speak. You shouldn't have that. You shouldn't have that at all. That's just a waste of a person who's going to be cast just to stand there and say nothing." It's like, if you're telling me that, you don't understand the comedy that could be created by having someone on there, which is very quite narrow-minded of that particular reviewer.
Yeah, I think I'm
not going to bother with them again.
No, well, exactly. I think it does show a lot of no knowledge about how powerful the physical presence of somebody being in that space can have. One thing I was going to say is I think we all forget how many celebrities Dame Edna has encountered through her career.
Yeah.
The talk shows, the events she's performed with, she's always been somebody. Barry was very clever in creating a character that wasn't rude, but also it was through facial expression that she could interview people and was cleverly interviewing these people.
A bit like Carolina Hearn with Miss Merton.
Yeah,
but the thing is, he had a way of getting the celebrities to want to be interviewed by him. Like the Elton John, Cher.
Yeah, you know, he's worked with some of the comedy greats. He's worked with Spike Milligan. He's worked with
Peter Cook.
He's worked with people that from throughout time you forget that Barry's brushed shoulders as Les or as Dame Edna in circles that you just revel in that moment because of the element.
And he's the only one out of all of them that has ever done an audience with. He's the only person to have done 3 an audience with Dame Edna.
Yeah.
For ITV, London Weekend Television. Yeah. Ken Dodd did 2.
Yeah, Ken Dodd did 2. And that shows you the legacy that Barry's created.
Yes.
I mean, even at 88, he was still picking people out of the audience for going to the loo on the front row.
Yeah, that was funny. Yeah.
But playing with the audience and knowing just how to do it, but very specific and very poignantly, and it was still comedy.
Yeah, such a legend. And he's still touring throughout the whole of 2022, and he promised he'll be back.
Yeah. So
whether that's going to be
Edna's
with Dame, yes, exactly. So if Dame Edna is coming back near us, we shall definitely be there, and we shall definitely be doing a podcast on that one.
Definitely.
So that brings us to the end of this particular mini-sode. Call this a show. So scores on the doors.
Well, I don't normally do this, but this one's going to be a 10 out of 10.
Oh my goodness. It's taken how many?
It's just taken quite a few of these discussions, but today's a 10 out of 10.
Yes. For me, it is what it is. You know, I can't compare this to a normal show, but 10 out of 10, Barry, thank you very much. So, what sound effect will you be choosing from the following? A complete train wreck? Tumbleweed? An audible shrug of the shoulders? A slow clap? A pleasant applause? Or a standing ovation? what will it be? Because I think you're going to go with me.
It's going to be
standing ovation, isn't
overwhelming
it?
standing
overwhelming.
ovation.
And do you know what? I wanted to stand up in the audience and do them, but because no one else, it's a bit like...
I wanted to stand up, but then I also realised the population of the actual audience was quite old, so maybe it took a lot to stand up.
Like I say, behind us there was a lot of crutches and sticks and dinner trains going around.
Yeah.
And we were in a really nice theatre as well at the front. So...
But yeah, definitely a standing ovation from me.
Yes, and a standing ovation from me. As well as being abused by the people sat behind me.
Yeah.
Spilling drinks, but... So there we are. That's our discussion of Barry Humphries, the man behind the mask. And we hope you found it insightful.
If not, entertaining.
Coming up over the next few episodes, we will be discussing Animal Farm,
First Touch,
and the new production of Ladies of Letters. That's it for this week, folks.
If you'd like to drop us a message, please email us at upstagedowstagepod@gmail.com. Remember, you can always join in the chat to share with us your views on a production.
Also, make sure to like and subscribe to our channel so you get every episode the second it's released. And we hope you join us again for another instalment of Upstage Downstage.